Welcome back, Dirk. Let's have a chat about the Thai MotoGP this past weekend, and that was a bunch of excitement, wasn't it?
No, absolutely. It cannot get any better than this, I think. It's still a head-to-head race. We've only got two meetings left, but I mean, Thailand, there was just so much excitement at that race, both in the sprint and the main race. And it's keeping us on the edge of our seats.
Yeah, like you mentioned, there's only two candidates left. All the others have now fallen by
Wow.
the wayside, literally fallen by the wayside. But you've got Martin left and Pecco Bagnaia, and they just went at it hammer and tongs this weekend. And at the end of the weekend, Bagnaia made a slight dent in that lead that Jorge Martin has, but it was a tough weekend. Conditions weren't that favorable. That made it even more exciting. Tell us about
Yeah.
starting with qualifying and the likes. What happened?
Well, basically, Pecco Bagnaia got pole position after Jorge Martin and Marc Marquez. The other two who've really been pushing for the lead in the championship, but they both fell in qualifying. So Pecco had the opportunity to get only his fourth pole position of the season. Can you believe it? And Martin had to settle for third place. Marc Marquez for fifth. Bastianini got second. So he was on the front foot at that stage. Qualifying went his way, first shots fired, and it set everything up for the weekend. But the big thing about Thailand was the weather conditions, there's dodgy track conditions, rain, wet, etc. So that unsettles everything, and anything can happen. And basically it did. That's lots of weird stuff did happen. Sprint race first. Martin, we have to admit at this stage, apart from him keeping his cool these days, he's just the best starter in the pack right now. I mean, the last couple of races, he's every time, doesn't matter whether he gets pole position, but he launches really, really well. His reaction time is like a boxer's, and he's like a rocket ship out of the blocks. So he did that in the sprint as well, and from third position. But then he went on the inside of Pecco Bagnaia, pushed him wide because he went in too hard. And that opened the gap for Enea Bastianini to take the inside line and to pass both of them. And he went on to win the sprint, which was great for him. And that's like something, his fifth consecutive sprint podium this season. So it's great for the other factory, Lenovo Ducati rider. But Martin fell back because of that, because of running wide, back to fifth. And then he just started. I mean, he was so aggressive. He came from there, past all of them, went past Marc Marquez, past Pecco Bagnaia, all the way. So got a second there. So that increased his points tally, the points difference with another 2 to 22. So things did not look good for Pecco at that stage, even after he qualified for the pole position.
All right, and then the main race started, and I watched that one, and like you just mentioned, Jorge Martin is like a rocket. He just shot off
Yeah,
into the distance, and everybody had
unbelievable.
to catch up. And Pecco Bagnaia, as he's now doing these days, they just fell in behind him and started pressuring. And as we've seen with Martin in the past, he doesn't like that too much. It's not that good at leading, and he sometimes can lose his head a little bit, and he
Yeah.
made a mistake again this weekend.
I think the track conditions had a lot to do with that. They really struggled, and they had to run on rain tires the whole race. It was wet. It wasn't raining hard, but the whole track was wet, and it remained largely wet. So that influenced it a lot. We'll have a look at that a little bit later on. But Jorge Martin, as you said, he just launched well again, and he went for it. But then Pecco Bagnaia knew that he had to win this race. If he wants to salvage the championship and his defense of the championship, he had to win Sunday's race. And there was something about him. Where in the sprint he was more careful, he just went for it in the main race, And when we were small, we used to call it dice. They diced for it, They ran neck and neck on a wet track, one taking the lead, then the other, then that sort of thing. And then Pecco fell in behind, as you said, behind Jorge Martin, until Martin ran wide the first time. He ran wide another, I think, twice again. But that first time, then he took the inside line. And once Bagnaia was in front, that was it. He ran really, really hard to take the victory. And you can see, or you could see afterwards in his demeanor and in his face. There's always joy when he wins, he's grateful and he's happy. But there was something else in his body language and his facial expressions on Sunday, afterwards. There was relief, and there was There was this almost, you could almost sense the knowledge that I can do this. I still got this. And that's a very important thing. I think we could almost think of it as a mental breakthrough that he made. He went through a specific point. And that's going to be so important with the upcoming two meetings that we still have left.
It's a good point that you make there. These two guys must be under immense pressure.
Absolutely.
And Martin knows he's going to Aprilia next year. He's going to be nowhere. If he wants to win this championship, this is his best opportunity he's going to have for a couple of years. Bagnaia wants to win his third one in a row. Lots of pressure. Everybody else has now fallen by the wayside, and it's on their shoulders to make sure they win it. And whoever's going to be the strongest psychologically is going to end up being the champion, don't you think?
Absolutely. And they've both said in interviews that, quote unquote, it's not a nice place to be, and it isn't. There's just so much pressure now that you cannot really enjoy the racing. You just have to focus so hard and try your best not to let that immense pressure crush you, mentally, and make you make mistakes. So they both say it's not the ideal position to be in if it's this close, but they both really want to win it, But Martin is still there, and we have to admit that he's shown great maturity, in the main race on Sunday, the same thing. When Bagnaia took the lead there and ran with it, he pulled Marc Marquez with him. Marquez was in tow with Bagnaia, so he was in second position, and Martin stuck. He was in third, and then he saw Marc Marquez fall in corner 8, which put Marquez. He lost all mathematical possibilities of still winning any championship. But so when Marquez fell, Martin says that just after that, in the same corner, he felt it going himself as well. And then he realized, pull back and just stick to second. And that's a very important thing. He has shown much greater maturity than last year when it also went down to the last meeting. Not quite down to the wire, but it went down to the last meeting as well in Valencia. And but then he made critical mistakes. He pushed too hard the last couple of races, last couple of meetings, and he fell just before that final round, So basically he lost it there. And this time he's not doing that. He's focusing. If he's in second, then he's fine with that. And now here's the interesting thing about that. If he wins, or no, not wins, if he comes second in all remaining 4 races, both sprints and both main races, he wins the championship. So if he does exactly what he did on Sunday and he's satisfied with second, but no less than second, he will win the championship. So that makes it very interesting.
Even if Bagnaia wins those races?
Yes, absolutely. Because we've got 2 sprints and 2 main races left. Now, the points difference in the main race between the first and second is 5 points. In a sprint, that's 3. So that's 8 points per meeting that you can possibly get more than the second place guy. So it's and you don't have a bonus point for fastest lap like in F1 or anything. So that's it. So the only thing that Pecco Bagnaia can do, the maximum points he can gain on Jorge Martin is 16, So that's it. He can get more than Jorge Martin. So if Jorge Martin falls in second place and Bagnaia gets 8 and 8 at each weekend, Jorge Martin wins by 1 point in the championship.
Yes.
So it's most probably not going to boil down to that. But that just goes to show, if you do the math, all the pressure is still on Bagnaia now. He's looking really good. He's really focused. And touch wood, if nothing goes wrong, he'll still be there at the end, fighting for it and possibly taking it. However, upcoming race in Sepang, Malaysia, if something does happen, there's 17 points difference between the two of them. So if Martin gains another 21, he wins. That's it. He'll take the championship. Yeah.
I think I want to talk to you about the team tactics then a little bit. Because Bastianini is a much more consistent rider than Morbidelli is, as a supporting rider for Bagnaia than Morbidelli is for Martin. Where Bagnaia Bastianini can maybe slot into second and force Martin down to third for argument's sake and help him win the title like that. Where Morbidelli seems a bit erratic. He had another long lap penalty this weekend and the likes. Martin is sort of out on his own there.
Yeah, he's absolutely. That's why the Ducati Lenovo team at this Thailand meeting, they won the team's championship. Ducati's already got the manufacturers championship in the bag, but they won the teams championship because from Ducati they got the independent riders championship. But that's it. I mean, Morbidelli's not really there. He only causes trouble everywhere he goes these days. So that it's absolutely so. But as far as we know, as far as they are telling us, there aren't any team orders. You know, the guys, it goes down to the wire, it goes down to the checkered flag. But I mean, really, if it comes down to that, Bastianini's not going to push Bagnaia off the top step of a podium just to get it. Even though he's leaving, I really doubt that. Even though there aren't any orders, I'm quite sure he'll just let him be. The thing that we have to watch, for example, is him, but more importantly is Marc Marquez. How many points is Marc Marquez going to steal? That's the main thing right now, because he could make or break. He could be the kingmaker, actually. He denies that. He says he has nothing to do with the championship. But in effect, he could be the kingmaker. Because if he pushes Martin down, or even worse for the Lenovo Ducati team, if he pushes Bagnaia back with one spot and Bagnaia suddenly is 8 behind and not just 5, that sort of thing, that changes the whole picture, you see. So I think Martin is going to be a big role player in the upcoming 2 meetings.
Marquez, you mean?
Marquez, yes.
Well, talking about Marquez, I've mentioned it before we started recording. I've never seen such an acrobatic ride. I mean, he fell off that bike, but he almost climbed back onto it while he was falling. It was incredible. That sort of left my heart in my mouth there.
Yeah, but he that's what he does. I mean, he's legendary for being able to save and not fall. I mean, he holds the record for the most falls in one season last year also. But I mean, he really he can save it. He's really good in coming back if the bike it's a real bad shake, that sort of thing. But he has in the past literally pushed himself back up off the ground and carried on. So he's experienced in that regard, and he said that he thought he was going to push this one back up again. He thought might be able to salvage it, but then he hit the rumble strip after him already sliding, and then that was it. He just flipped out, and that was his race. Yeah, and that was his race. I mean, no contact, no win. It's as simple as that. No rubber on the tar, no win. That's it.
Yeah, sure. I want to talk to you about rubber on the tar. You mentioned it, and we talked about tires this entire season so far, but this weekend was a wet weekend, and I want to say almost a bit of the great equalizer. If I look at these guys going at the speeds they're going into those corners, just throwing the bikes into the corners and the likes, what makes it so difficult to be, I mean, apart from the obvious, to be on a motorbike at these kinds of speeds in those kind of conditions? And who are the better riders at this, the rain masters, if you want to call it that?
Yeah. Well, the obvious thing is that you have much less grip. So that they go for rain tires. They've got grooves and tread patterns and squish patterns and that sort of thing. It's got a different rubber compound, etc. So there is that. But the other thing that you have to realize riding any motorcycle in the rain is that the spray, the mist coming from the riders or the vehicles in front. If you ride on a highway in a heavy downpour with your bike, then the cars kick up mist and it influences your visibility, because you don't have wipers. You don't have time to wipe. You can't do anything. You have to peer right through it. It's as simple as that. So where's the best place to ride? Because you have to retain contact with the tar so as not to aquaplane. That is in the track of the vehicle in front of you. So ideally, you want to ride behind the racer in front of you because he's already made opened a little gap for you in the moisture. But that means that you ride in his in the cloud of moisture that he picks up, the spray. So you have to decide, and you could see them on Sunday. You could see some of them going really wide to get out of that, or they're taking a totally different line, or just falling slightly back but retaining that racing line. Because the thing is now, if you go wide, if you try to get out of the spray, then you take a wider line. You're not on the racing line, and it's actually quite simple. The racing line is the shortest distance around the track. That's how it works. That's why you get the best time. It's just simply the shortest route. at that speed. So you want to stick to the racing line if at all possible, but now you drift out to get rid of that spray. So that influences it to a large degree. And then you sit with a different type of tire degradation because you don't have the heat, the tires get cooled off. But if it starts drying out, then there's heavy tire wear, especially on the rear tires. Because of the grip and the tread patterns, it basically rips them apart. We heard that Brad Binder said on the Red Bull KTM that he called it, he rode his tire flat at the back. He viewed it as a flat tire right at the back. So he lost just so much grip eventually because of that. So as soon as it dries out, that influences it as well. And I suspect that was one of the problems that Jorge Martin encountered as well, and then he settled back into second position.
So who are traditionally the better riders in the rain?
But there are a couple of them, interestingly enough, and we saw that on Sunday. The two Red Bull KTM riders are both Jack Miller and Brad Binder. It's not as if they love those conditions, but they're really good. I think Jack Miller's crazy, so he might just love it. And they did really well. They were just under the top 3, top 4, and gunning for each other. We saw both of them and Pedro Acosta on the gas fighting it out for those positions for a long time. And they are both. And until, just by the way, Acosta pushed past both of them and he got the third part of this podium, which was really great because he had 5 DNFs and DNS, in the 5 previous races, sprint and main races. So it's a good result for him as a comeback. But those are 2. We have a couple of others as well, but the Alex Marquez is as well. Marc Marquez too. Marc doesn't mind changing track conditions because he adjusts really well to that. And Alex, for some reason, is really good in the rain specifically.
All right, talking about the KTMs, Acosta broke Jack Miller's heart. I mean, Jack Miller was on the podium, I think, beginning of last year, the last time he stood on the podium. And then Acosta, just sort of typical Acosta fashion, just, ended very strongly. Came past everybody, ended very strongly in the sense that he actually ended. He actually finished. So it makes a big difference. Yeah. And he was impressive. I mean, he was in the, it's not in the factory bike or anything, but he shows why he's going to the KTM factory team next year, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think great things are in store for them and for him next year. Although they say that all 4 bikes are going to be 2025 KTM RC16s next year. But we'll see what happens. But he's definitely, I mean, he's going places, and he proved that once again. He had some bad luck or pushed it a bit too hard, got injured as well in Australia, in the sprint after that big fall. So we hope he's okay. But he's definitely pushing. I think KTM, they've got other problems. In fact, they really need to come up with a new bike or a complete setup. Let's put it that way, and one that gels really well with the Michelins and that gives the guys, they've got the speed, they've got the power, they've got the braking. But at this stage, they're struggling slightly, especially Binder, with alignment through a corner, that sort of thing. So they need to fix that. But they need to have a complete package for next year if they want those guys to be really, really competitive. Because, I mean, they're getting Maverick Vinales and so on as well. So, yeah. The other thing with KTM apparently is that there's a little bit on the horizon, a little bit of a financial dark cloud. Apparently, the Perrier Mobility Group, the owners of KTM, they are in financial, not difficulties, but there is financial pressure on them. They have their share prices plummeted 85% over the last 2 weeks. It was said last week. They released
2 weeks or years.
2 years, sorry. Yeah. 2 years, pardon. So, and that is because they invested in Husqvarna and also in Gas, as we know, the Spanish company, and they bought some bicycle companies and so on. And the sales of those other brands have not been as well as they hoped for. At this stage, there's nothing. They've still committed to MotoGP with the backing of Red Bull, of course, big backing. And I believe they'll focus on MotoGP and on stuff like, motocross and enduro and so on, and rally raid. But what they have done is they wanted to enter into Moto2 on a bigger scale, and they wanted to go into superbike racing as well, and they shelved that, which just goes to show that they are cutting some of their losses and some of their expenses. So we'll have to see what happens there. We hope it's all fine.
Right, you mentioned there's 2 races left. Malaysia's coming up, Sepang. Just tell us about that track a little bit.
Yeah, Sepang is an interesting track in the sense that it's got a little bit of everything. It's got 2 or 3 really, really tight corners, almost hairpins, and then it's got a couple of nice long sweeps, and then it's got 2 long straights. They reach very high speeds there. So it is a very fast track. It's very high humidity. Once again, it's always very hot, and like it goes, you can have rain again. You can have those kinds of conditions. So that could put the cat amongst the pigeons once again. As we've said, Pecco Bagnaia is in a very, very mentally in a very good position. He'll go into this very positively, and that'll be bolstered by the fact that he won there in 21 and 22, the MotoGPs. So that'll help him. Enea Bastianini won there last year, and Alex Marquez took the sprint. So it's obviously, and I think it's because of those long straights and the longer corners. It's an ideal track for Ducati. So the Lenovo factory team will hope that they will repeat last year and the year before's results.
Interesting enough, you talked about Ai Ogura winning the Moto2 GP title. To tell us about him and where is he going next year?
Yes. I think, well, he's going to Trackhouse, so Aprilia Trackhouse next year. And everybody was, we were slightly surprised because we thought them being an American company, they'll take a young American rider, but they appointed him. And here he goes and he proves himself. He came second Sunday in the Moto2 race, but that was good enough. Still with two meetings left, he won the championship. So they'll be glad about that, and I think they need it. They haven't had really good results, although I have to admit the team is in 8th position. Collectively their points, and that's above all the Japanese teams, so it's not that bad. But they'll be glad about that. That'll give them something to look forward to next year.
But you and I should have a talk towards at the end of the season about who's going where next year. Just give a bit of a rundown again, because I'm always wondering. I know where they are, but I can't always remember. It would be nice to sit down and talk. Listen, Trackhouse is going to be these guys, and Lenovo is going to be these guys. That should be something interesting to talk about.
Yes, we'll do that.
All right, Dirk. Thanks, man. That was interesting as always. We'll talk again next week after this race or next time, and we'll see what happens then. It's going to down to the wire.
We can't miss a second from now on. You cannot miss anything, because you might miss the big moment that's a decider in this championship. So we have to watch everything and watch it closely.
Yeah, no, I did this weekend. I actually woke up early to make sure that I can watch it. MotoGP in the morning and Formula One at night. It was quite difficult. I can't tell you that much. Anyway, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Cheers.